An Airbus A320neo dropped 300 feet in seconds and injured 24 people. A pilots' union warned that a cockpit button can shut an engine down on its own. Airbus is running roughly 450 aircraft behind its own delivery target. And 40% of its Spanish workforce walked out over office rules. All of that happened in a company that's currently beating Boeing by every measure that matters. None of these problems are connected. That's what makes it strange. Start with the flight because it's the most serious. On August 4, 2026, Air India flight AI 2379 was flying from Phuket to Delhi. The aircraft was an A320neo, 7 years old, carrying 137 passengers and 8 crew. During cruise, it suddenly dropped around 300 feet. Roughly 24 people were injured. Air India initially called it turbulence. Its later statement dropped that description and said the aircraft had suffered a sudden loss of altitude. Indian authorities classified it as a serious incident, and the Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau opened a probe with technical help from Airbus and France's BEA. Then Airbus's own preliminary analysis came out, and it was worse than turbulence. The aircraft has 3 separate hydraulic systems. Hydraulics are what actually move the flight controls using pressurized fluid to push the surfaces on the wings and tail. 3 systems exist so that losing 1 or even 2 still leaves you flying. All 3 registered a loss of pressure one after another in quick succession. For about 4 seconds, the pilots had no elevators and no ailerons. Those are the surfaces that control whether the nose points up or down and whether the aircraft banks left or right. The first officer made a full nose down input on the side stick and got no direct response. The aircraft pitched upward, then dropped. Pressure returned within seconds and the crew recovered. The aircraft landed safely in Delhi. Airbus also found the aircraft experienced forces beyond its specified limits during the event and asked Air India to inspect it for possible structural damage. It requested details of hydraulic maintenance from the previous month and more detailed accounts from the pilots. 2 things matter here. First, nothing has established a root cause. The Airbus document describes a sequence of events, not a verdict, and no fleet-wide instruction has gone out to other A320 operators. Second, this doesn't automatically mean Airbus built something faulty. Air India has its own maintenance record under scrutiny with data showing a large share of its fleet flagged for repetitive defects. But the timing is uncomfortable because Airbus already issued its largest ever recall in 2025 after a different altitude loss incident involving an A320. That one required a software update across more than 6,000 aircraft. Then the day before that Air India flight, a pilots union published something unrelated and equally awkward. BALPA, which represents pilots at British Airways, Virgin Atlantic, and EasyJet, warned about the engine fire push button on Airbus aircraft. It called the fault potentially catastrophic. That button is one of the most protected controls in an Airbus cockpit. Pressing it isolates an engine from fuel, hydraulics, and other essential systems. It's designed to require deliberate pilot action, and it sits high on the overhead panel, recessed and guarded, so it can't be knocked by accident. In December 2024, an Air New Zealand A320neo carrying 142 passengers lost its right engine about 15 minutes after takeoff from Wellington. The crew declared a mayday and diverted. Neither pilot had touched the fire button. It had activated by itself. Investigators found the cause. A retaining pin inside the push button had been bent during installation. Normal vibration in flight, then worked the bent pin loose, letting the button trigger without anyone pressing it. EASA issued an airworthiness directive requiring inspections and replacement of faulty units on the A319, A320, and A321 family. Then in February 2026, a British Airways A350-1000 was flying from Las Vegas to London over Halifax, Canada, with the captain resting in the crew bunk. The number 2 engine fire switch popped out and the engine ran down. The messages on the cockpit display were brief and didn't initially indicate an engine failure. The crew couldn't relight the engine until they physically pushed the fire switch back in. The A350 isn't covered by that directive, even though BALPA says it uses a similar fire panel design. BALPA's concern is that the fault is completely latent, meaning there's no warning on the cockpit display until the moment it happens. Airlines have until November 2027 to complete inspections on the aircraft that are covered, a deadline the union described as understandably uncomfortable. So that's the safety picture. Two separate issues, neither proven to be Airbus's fault, both landing in the same month on a manufacturer whose aircraft dominate the world's fleet. Now the second problem, which is purely about maths, Airbus delivered 67 commercial aircraft in July to 39 customers. That brought the year-to-date total to 418 aircraft. The full year target is around 870. That means Airbus needs to deliver roughly 452 more aircraft in the final 5 months of the year. Around 90 per month. July managed 67, June managed 89, which was the year's peak. And August is when most of Europe goes on holiday and factories slow down. The bottleneck isn't demand. Airbus took 204 gross orders in July alone, pushing its 2026 order intake past 1,090 aircraft. Its backlog represents roughly 10.7 years of production at current rates. Customers are lining up. The bottleneck is engines and supply chain. Pratt & Whitney engine supply constraints continue to limit how fast Airbus can ramp up A320neo production. And on the wide-body side, Airbus delivered no A330s at all in July, with production sitting well below its target rate. This is the strange contradiction at the center of the company. Airbus is comfortably ahead of Boeing with a 51 aircraft delivery lead through July. It reaffirmed guidance of around 7.5 billion euros in adjusted operating profit. It has more orders than it can build for the next decade. And it still can't reliably convert those orders into finished aircraft fast enough to hit its own number. Then there's the freighter, which adds a third layer. The A350F is Airbus's attempt to break into the large freighter market that Boeing has dominated for decades. It isn't a passenger A350 with a cargo door bolted on. Airbus developed a shortened fuselage specifically for it, combining much of the A350-1000 structure with a large main deck cargo door and a strengthened floor. Maximum payload is around 111 tons over 8,700 kilometers. There are 107 firm orders. Strategically, it matters enormously. Airbus is now targeting the maiden flight for around September 24, potentially slipping into early October, though publicly the company only commits to flying it before the end of the year. Certification is expected to take 12 to 15 months, with first customer deliveries in the second half of 2027. Here's where it gets awkward. Confirming a first flight date should have been straightforward good news. Instead, industry reporting suggested production problems with the freighter's cargo doors could push deliveries into 2028. The share price fell 2.3% the day that landed. A specific component causing trouble on a program that hasn't flown yet raises a bigger question. Can Airbus execute a new aircraft program while simultaneously trying to ramp up every existing production line? And then there's the problem nobody predicted, which is about people rather than aircraft. Airbus tried to introduce a stricter return-to-office policy requiring employees in the office 4 days a week. Employees pushed back hard. In Spain, industrial action reportedly involved around 40% of the company's 14,000 Spanish workers. Management backed down and kept a more flexible arrangement. On its own, that's a minor corporate story. Stacked on top of everything else, it's part of a pattern. A company with record demand and record profitability is simultaneously fighting its supply chain, its regulators, its schedule, and its own workforce. So what's actually happening at Airbus? The evidence doesn't point toward collapse. Nothing here suggests a company in trouble the way Boeing genuinely was after 2019. Airbus is winning on orders, winning on deliveries, and financially strong. What it points toward is a company being stretched. The safety issues are under investigation and may turn out to have nothing to do with Airbus design at all. The delivery shortfall is a supply chain problem more than a manufacturing one. The A350F delay is a program problem. The strike was a management misjudgment. 4 different problems, 4 different causes, all arriving at once. That's the real story. Airbus spent years watching Boeing struggle to execute under pressure while orders kept flowing in. Its biggest challenge right now isn't finding customers, it's building the aircraft it has already sold on time while proving nothing is wrong with the ones already flying. Having too much demand is a good problem to have. It's still a problem